Hi, this is Steve from Sweet Child of Time. Before the show starts, I wanted to let you know how we do the show. It all starts with Zencastr. I send the link out to my co-hosts. We all get on screen together. We can all see each other just fine. It's a great, easy, nice connection. Everybody records locally on their microphones, which means that if their Wi-Fi cuts in or out, or if the conversation drops sometimes, which is pretty common in podcasting when you're on screen on a Zoom call, Zencastr records everything perfectly. So in the final edit, when they send me their file or when I download their file, everything is there. That cutout is not there. So it works great when you're editing. Zencastr makes it really easy to edit your podcast as well. You can just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my promo code SweetChildOfTime and get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. If you want to have the same easy experience that I do for all of my podcasting needs, then choose Zencastr. It's time to share your story. Hello there, and welcome to Sweet Child of Time. I'm your host, Steve Barnes, and today I am joined by Lindsey Dunn from One of My Stories so we can talk about all the cool movies from 2023. She has already done her top 10 list of 2023 movies, and I have been watching a lot of movies lately, so I asked her if she would come on because she's a movie critic and I know her, and she podcasts and she's a friend. These are all great reasons to get together and talk about movies. Let me introduce her and bring her on now from One of My Stories. You already know who she is. It's Lindsey Dunn. Ahoy there, Lindsey.
Ahoy there, Steve.
How's it going today?
It's going good. The Oscars was yesterday, so...
That's right. I didn't have anything planned for the Oscars because I'm not like a full-time movie person like yourself. Are you going to be doing like any kind of write-ups or podcasts? No promises for anything that we haven't already done, but is that something that One of My Stories generally does? It's like an Oscar rundown?
No, I spend more time talking about the nominations and awards for my Film Critic Association, which I already did back in December, as you know, and brought on a guest to talk about that. So that is what I platform. I may be name dropping Oscar information as we go along tonight. Right. But other than that, no, I don't plan to release any content about the Oscars.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't watch it last night. I'm not really like an award show person. I know the stars were all out last night, though. I know it. They red carpeted it up, and I don't think anyone got slapped because I didn't hear about that. So I assume everyone is okay and unassaulted.
Yeah, no one got slapped and nobody streaked across the stage, although that almost happened last night. But It was a relatively calm show compared to years past.
Like you said, some of these movies that we saw definitely won some Oscars. But yeah, before we get started, it's been a while since we've talked, and I know that you've been on a trip down south, and you're going to be featuring that on One of My Stories. And it wasn't exactly a vacation. What were you doing down there?
Well, it was a Alabama civil rights pilgrimage. And as is usual with these things, you think you know what you're getting into, but as I was on the trip, I learned more about, kind of what we're doing. And a lot of it is actually contained in the movie Selma, which came out, I believe, in 2014. Ava DuVernay put that out. And I'd watched it in the past. I watched it when it first came out, but it's been a while. And on the night before the trip, I was all packed up. I had my stuff ready. So I was like, I'm going to watch Selma. And I was like, okay, what's interesting about Selma is, my trip was 4 cities in Alabama. We started with Birmingham, went to then Marion, Alabama, Selma, and Montgomery.
Okay.
So the civil rights movement was about desegregation and gaining the right to vote in the 1960s for Black citizens in America. And our trip was basically a geographic as well as chronological timeline through the civil rights movement. So the first city we went to in Birmingham was kind of an instigator for this whole thing. There were marches happening, but there was this children's crusade that happened. From there, the bomb that was dropped that killed 4 little girls.
Right.
Then as the pilgrimage, it started in Selma and then was supposed to go to Montgomery. So Birmingham was kind of an instigator for everything. Then there was Selma to Montgomery were these marches, 3 of them that happened. The last one was the one that was successful. But in the middle there was Marion, which is significant events happened there too. So we visited different sites, talked about what happened there at each place, and it was all packed. We were all on a bus, so almost like we were on our own Montgomery bus boycott. And Monday and Friday were travel days, so it was 4 cities packed into 3 days. It was very exhausting. But I did post pictures from the trip. If you're interested in this, the contents, some of it's a little heavy, but I talk about the history and also my personal reflections. That is not on anything currently called one of my stories. It's actually on my Facebook page, which is Lindsey Dunn, Lindsey Dunn. And those posts are currently public because I want people to see them, share them, comment on them freely. I wasn't going to make them public, but I made a last minute decision today to go ahead and do that. So if you want to see the pictures, you can see it. A lot of my pictures look like a lot of the pictures probably a lot of people take at these same spots, but in the pictures themselves, I write my personal reflections about being there.
There you go.
Which is where my stuff is, my writing. So if you are interested, post there. But it was a very insightful trip. It was heavy, challenging, and it was a very good experience. But that's what I was doing. So
it sounds like it was a guided thing too, where you had somebody that was like explaining the steps and telling you stories as you were going and stuff. So I think like, somebody making that pilgrimage by themselves might have like a different experience, but when you have somebody there that's learned and like gives you like a lot of details and examples of what you're experiencing there, that's really neat stuff. And I'm sure you went into it. You're a writer. I'm sure you got some good stuff to say on there. I will definitely check it out, and I encourage the sweeties to check it out too. That's what I call people from now on, the sweeties.
Hey, it's time travel, right? We're going back in time. We're going back to the 1960s.
I was thinking this was a very appropriate discussion because you were talking about going back in time. So yes, that is appropriate. Let's see, what have I been doing? I've been watching a lot of these movies is what I've been doing. Nothing too intense or like history worthy. I think you didn't make a point that you were going to make. You started talking about the movie Selma and how that kind of tied in with your trip. Did that movie like kind of help set the tone at all for your trip, or was it just kind of like unrelated?
Oh, it very much is related. I brought up Selma because those cities that I mentioned are in the movie.
Right.
So, I mean, we got into more detail during the trip than is in that movie, but it sort of gave me the basis of understanding where we were going and why. And the movie starts with the bombing in the church. Right. So kind of that's at the pace for me. Okay.
I obviously have not seen that movie, so I need to get myself into it as well. So it sounds like I'm needing to take this trip too. I mean, I guess just not any random person. You have to like, it seems like the kind of thing you have to make yourself ready for and be open to. Mm-hmm. Was everybody on your trip on board with that? Or were there any kind of like, hanger-ons that were like, oh, I'm here because my sister's here or kind of thing?
No, everybody was willing participants. There was one mom that drug her two adults. I shouldn't say drag. They wanted to go, but everybody was a willing participant. It was also a racially mixed group. So that was something people appreciated about it, that it was white and black people. The leaders were a couple that used to live in Alabama and they have many connections. So that was neat. As we visited the places, we actually had speakers that were there when the events took place, like people who were in the Children's Crusade. They're known as foot soldiers because they were boots on the ground people. Wow, so we got to hear from people that there were these connections. But yes, these places are open. Anybody could go, and I would encourage you to. But I'm hoping that my pictures, what they will do is could give people a sense of what I did. And then if you wanted to, you can form your own little itinerary.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially if you're an Alabamian, if that's how they identify themselves as. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're bi-weekly now, of course. So I'm releasing every other week, trying to get a variety of different co-hosts in here. But I'm thinking that the next one we do might be a movie podcast with myself and Lindsey and Nate. That's kind of on the docket here. Where were we at? We were talking about you. I was telling the listeners that I'm going bi-weekly for now. The next thing that we have planned to do is Wheel of Time Season 3, and that's a good ways off. So in the meantime, I'm hoping we can fill some time with Corwin doing some episodes of Wheel of Time. I'm hoping that yourself and Nate can join me for some movies in the future. But for right now, it's movie time. I'm going to start out, Lindsey, by letting you know what I've seen so far in 2023, because the main impetus of this discussion is Lindsey's top 10. I hadn't seen any movies in 2023 up until about maybe like September or October. Just kind of didn't have any interest in seeing movies and definitely didn't want to see anything new at the time. I don't know, just didn't see any movies. So I decided that there's a lot of good stuff out there. I've been hearing good stuff. And I saw Lindsey's list, and her list contained a bunch of movies that I already wanted to see anyway. So that was my starting point. And then after that, I kind of branched out and watched about 15 other movies as well. So I'm going to talk about those other movies that are not on Lindsey's list, and then we'll go through her list. Your list, Lindsey, I'm going to talk to you now because I have ranked all these movies. Like, you have ranked them 1 through 10. So I assume that the way you ranked them, number 10 was like the bottom, number 1 was the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you assumed correctly.
Okay, yes. I'm going to kind of do the same thing. I'm going to discuss my movies, and I'm going to start from the bottom. Now, these aren't like my top 10, 15 movies, but these just happen to be the movies that I've seen that are not on your list. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to start from the bottom. So from my bottom, from what I saw, first off was Leave the World Behind. I watched that. That was a Netflix movie starring Julia Roberts. So that was like a big return for her. And who else was in that? Ethan Hawke. Kevin Bacon played a pretty big role. Have you seen this movie on Netflix?
I have.
Okay, sure. This is at the bottom of my list. So that's why I'm bringing it up first. I did everything out of 10 stars, and I gave this a 5 stars because I thought it was fine. It was enjoyable to watch, but it didn't really do anything for me. It didn't really leave any lingering questions, didn't leave an impression on me. And I really couldn't say to anybody like, hey, you got to check this movie out, unless they were like a Julia Roberts or an Ethan Hawke fan or something like that. And that's just based on my enjoyment level. All this is not based on me being a film critic like you, Lindsey. I'm just looking at these as like, did I enjoy them? And this one is like, yeah, I saw it. It was okay. I didn't hate it. How about you? What did you think about Leave the World Behind?
I hated this movie.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I absolutely despise this movie.
All right.
And I was listening to a podcast where someone reviewed it, and they always pretty much hate everything, but they liked this movie. And I got so mad because I was like, why would you like this movie? I hated this whole concept of the girl that all she cared about was watching Friends. Mm-hmm. I thought that was so dumb and made me just mad. I was like, okay. And I predicted that I was like, it's going to end with her getting to see Friends somehow. But I was like, the way they did it, and they had built up to make you think they were making some kind of point.
Right.
With the whole Kevin Bacon, Ethan Hawke, and Mahershala Ali scene. And you're like, oh, they're really learning. We all need to come together if we want to survive. But then it's like the stupid girl like is in the bunker by herself with all the food and all the DVDs she wants. And I'm like, basically we're screwed because this is how people are. They're just selfish and they want to tune out the world and watch everything on the TV instead of actually helping people or helping other people, making sure they're safe. So I thought if you were trying to make a point, you failed because you totally sabotaged yourself.
Right. I didn't feel quite as strongly in my conviction about that, but I'm definitely on your side. I mean, this is the bottom of my list here, so obviously I didn't think too much of it either.
It had the worst dancing.
Oh God, yes. I've seen some pretty bad dance scenes this year in these movies. And yeah, this is among the, maybe not the worst, but it's among the worst. Sure. Let's see, I'm going to move on. I had another number 5 that I rated 5 out of 10, which means I only halfway liked it. And this is a surprise. This is Brendan Small's Army of the Doomstar, which is the sequel to the Metalocalypse series. So last Sweet Child of Time was episode 100, and you heard myself and Heather and Nate gush about Death Clock and how great the Doomstar Requiem is. We loved it. I loved it. It made me tear up at certain points. I just unabashedly love that movie. Love that opera because it's a musical. And this Army of the Doomstar is supposed to be like the finale of Metalocalypse. This is like what it has all been led up to. This is the end of it. And it was so lackluster and it was kind of fan servicey. I'm positive you haven't seen it. Is that right, Lindsey?
I have not seen it, no.
Okay. Great cast. Of course. You got the same crew as from before. You got Barry McCreary doing some music. You got Jack Black. You got Mark Hamill. Great cast. Christopher Plummer. But I don't know. I thought it was kind of like a fan service ending. It's like he wrote this movie 8 years after the show ended as like an ending. And it was because the fans petitioned for it. So I don't know. I reluctantly tell you to watch Army of the Doomstar. I would definitely tell you to watch the Doomstar Requiem, however. And so Lindsey has no opinion on that. I'm going to move on to my number 6 out of 10. These are my 6s. I got a few of these. I'm going to start with one called, I'm going to ask you first if you've seen it. Have you seen Self-Reliance on Hulu?
No.
Okay. It's written by and starring Jake Johnson. He is from New Girl, and he also had a small role in that's right. He was a trivia question on the last episode. The answer was Jake Johnson. Anyway, he did this movie, and it's not bad. It's better than the other 2 movies that we've talked about already. It's about a guy who goes on to like a black market game show, but he's not allowed to tell anybody about it. So he's very secretive about the fact that he's on a game show. And it's a comedy. And it also stars Andy Samberg, who plays the role as like the host of this game show. Mary Holland plays a good role in it as like his wife. I'm a big fan of her comedy. It's good to watch. It's a comedy, and it's well done. And it also has Anna Kendrick in it. I forgot. Anna Kendrick plays a person who is also playing on that same, I said black market. I didn't mean to say that. I meant to say dark web. It's a dark web game show. So, yes.
A little different, but not much.
Yeah, they're still kind of illegal and still kind of underground. But sure, I'll breeze past that one. Self-Reliance. It wasn't bad. It was worth watching. Number 6, I'm sure, is a movie that you've seen. Also, number 6 is Saltburn. You have seen Saltburn. I'm sure of it, right?
I have, yes.
It did not make your top 10 list. Does that mean that you saw it after your top 10 list, or you just didn't care for it to make your top 10 list?
It had some interesting moments. It wasn't something I really enjoyed watching.
Okay, yeah.
It's interesting. I would watch it again, but it has flaws. So
it does. I kind of compared it to like American Psycho. Is that the one that has like Christian Bale and he plays like a brutal murderer?
There is a movie called American Psycho with Christian Bale. Yeah, I've never seen it.
Okay, it's very similar. Like Barry Cohen plays this character who gets mixed up with this very rich family, and it's kind of, his motives are kind of unclear. The family is just a rich family that lives in this castle with just a lot of wealth and a lot of privilege and very insular. And there's a really bad dance scene at the end. This was my least favorite dance scene of the year. Was this one right here. And I thought the movie was okay. I was all right with it. I gave it a 6, but I thought the dance scene at the end was awful. I thought it was a terrible ending. And the ending put me in kind of like a worse mood. And like, I think if it had a better ending, I might have given it a 7 because there's certain aspects to it that I did like. I like the fact that Rosamund Pike was in this. Anybody Wheel of Time listeners, here's Moraine. She plays a huge role in this. Actually, I think she's like top billed in this movie. I'm not sure why. It seems like it's a Barry Cohen movie. But yeah, you saw it. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about Saltburn?
I think Emerald Fennell's a really talented director. Her previous picture was Promising Young Woman, which I really liked. I wish that one was on Prime and Netflix right now instead of Saltburn, because I would love to watch that one again. But, I really liked the character of Farley. That was my favorite character. And also the blonde sister. I thought she was excellent. But a lot of people compare it to Talented Mr. Ripley. That was the movie a lot of people compared it to.
I can see that.
Interesting concept.
settings were great. Like the settings and the visuals were wonderful. I loved like how they shot the film.
The soundtrack was fun. It's like a 1990s historical fiction, I think. So it's in that same time period when I was in the UK. So it did definitely give me some nostalgia vibes for a time. Good performances. Just thought it kind of thought it was more shocking than it was. It was like, I'm going to do shocking things to shock you, and not really in a way that services the plot. You know how I feel. You've mentioned how I feel about sex scenes. It's like, okay, like if you're going to have a sex scene, fine, but it should do some storytelling or something to help you understand the story better or the plot better, or just draw the line better for the character. And this kind of felt like it was just putting shocking in things to be shocking.
I kind of got that vibe too, because that's the first thing I was hearing about this movie were the shocking scenes. Because I was hearing like a lot of different podcasts and different people just talking about those scenes. And this is kind of like a thought that I had back 20 years ago in 2006 or so. I'm not trying to sound like that, but it's true. I kind of realized that there was all these raunchy comedies that were coming out, like one after another. And every single one of them had like the scene where they would try to outdo like the last movie. Like what can be like the big gross out, like sex, poop, like whatever thing that's going to make our movie like stand out. And it seemed like a lot of movies were like, they thought about that first. Like, what's the hook going to be? And then let's write the movie around the hook. And I almost thought that about Saltburn in a way, until I actually saw the movie. And then I was like, well, obviously there's a lot more to this movie, like the cinematography, and it's really well put together. It's not just a gross out film. Mm-hmm. But there are some questionable, weird scenes that if you're okay with that, go for it.
Yeah. We mentioned Rosamund Pike, but there also Carey Mulligan, who was in Promising Young Woman. She's in the movie for like 10 whole minutes, but I still don't understand what the purpose of her character was. And it was almost like she was in a different movie than the rest of the cast.
Which actress is this?
Carey Mulligan. She was like the weird cousin that was at the house. She was wearing like a bright red wig or something.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I do remember her.
She was visiting when Barry Keoghan arrives. And yeah, I was just like, what is her purpose in this? She just kind of like a weird aunt or something that shows up and then she just leaves. And it's like, okay, that was interesting.
I kind of think that her purpose was like they were showing you there's this outlier in the family, and then she did a thing and now she's gone. And that kind of set the tone. Like that happened to Farley next. And then it started happening to everybody eventually, whether they were like outcast or killed. So like, I think that's what it was basically, is like, she was like the first one to get gone. And maybe, I haven't rewatched it, I wonder if it was our boy Oliver Quick that like was guilty of that too. He could have been.
Maybe. Yeah, it's definitely a movie it's interesting. And I started to watch it again just for a fun, kind of Saturday watch. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's terrible. It's just, I wouldn't have said it was in my top movies, but like it has some interesting pieces, like The Silence. When we talked about The Silence, we love the directors. We're like, it has some interesting pieces, right? But it's not a good movie. And that's how I feel about this. It's not a good movie, but would I watch it again? Sure. Just as entertainment. Okay.
Well, right along the same line here, this is also a 6. Let me make sure this is my last number 6. No, I got a couple more 6s. This is what I'm going to talk about next, is one that you made it as one of your special mentions. It didn't make your top 10, but you were like, here's a few more movies that you should definitely check out. And one of those movies was one that I had already checked out, Theater Camp. Mm-hmm. I'm a big Amy Sedaris fan. So like I already knew this movie, and this movie I'd seen like when it first came out, because I was kind of waiting for it to come out. It's one of those kind of deals. So it's a small indie film. It's a mockumentary comedy film. Let's see, directed by Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman. And it's about a theater camp. It's an underfunded theater camp, we should say, of course. And they have to rally the troops and... I won't even give away the plot because we're not talking plots here, but theater camp. It was a fun one. The bad thing about it is I saw it so long ago and I remember enjoying it. Heather was asking me, like, because Heather watched it with me. She was like, what was it about? What was it about again? And I was like, And I had a hard time like assimilating the plot. The thing I remember is like the dialogue going back and forth among the characters at a really easy pace. And it was just a very easy, fun movie to watch if you're into like indie films and like quick, fun dialogue.
Yeah, that's how I felt as well. I just enjoyed it. I was laughing at everything that happened. I liked the characters. I liked the world. It seemed really familiar. And yeah, the plot, I really can't tell you exactly, but it's about the funding, right? The executive director, the lead lady who's been championing this has died, and she's left it to her son or a family member who's not so into theater camp, but he thinks he's kind of a
techie startup guy.
He thinks he's like an entrepreneur.
But even he's not a bad guy, though. Like that's what I like about this movie. Nobody's like really terrible or like over demonized or anything. Ayu Abidire is in this movie. Like she's popping up in everything, and this is an early movie that she was in. Amy Sedaris is one of the producers, so I usually trust her. I actually just watched a movie a couple nights ago, a 2024 movie. It's called First Time Female Director, which is also produced by Amy Sedaris. It was not a good one, so I don't know if I could I don't know if I can always trust her going here on out, because usually when I see that that she is, I'm sorry, I keep saying Amy Sedaris. It is Amy Sedaris, right? I want to say Amy Poehler. Amy Sedaris, yes. Editor, where you at? Steve said Amy Poehler. Amy Poehler did produce First Time Female Director. Didn't do a great job. Amy Sedaris produced This Theater Camp. Great job, Amy Sedaris. Let's keep the Sedaris family name up.
Oh, my.
Oh, my. I don't know. And the last one, that's a number 6. These are movies that I thought were just kind of okay. I watched these. I liked them. This is in the exact same boat. This is from Please Don't Destroy, the guys from SNL. This is The Treasure of Foggy Mountain. This is a movie produced by Conan O'Brien. And these guys are all like pretty much comedy elite. They're like the sons of other great SNL writers. And they're younger. They're kind of like the new, I kind of think like the new Lonely Island, basically. I'm going to pause right here and say, do you watch any SNL at all? Or are you familiar with these guys, Lindsey?
Yeah, I don't know who you're talking about. I watch SNL skits on occasion as the political season stirs up. Or if I hear a buzz about, oh, did you see SNL last night? Then they're like, I'll turn it on. Just like this weekend, for instance.
Well, you remember in the 90s and the 2000s, during like the Will Ferrell era, they had like the TV Fun House. And every now and then they would do the TV Fun House, and that spawned like the Super Friends. And it was just like an animated feature. They would always have like a little pre-done segment for the show. And then around the late 2000s, 2010s, it was The Lonely Island that did that for SNL. So it was like Andy Samberg, Yorma, I can't remember his last name, and Akira, I can't remember his last name. It was another trio of 3 guys that would make film segments for SNL, and they would be like standalone segments. That's where like I'm on a Boat came from, and like Lazy Sunday, which became like big YouTube hits. Well, they've all moved on, and now there's like a new crew of guys that are doing the exact same thing for SNL now. And their crew is called Please Don't Destroy. It features Ben Marshall, John Higgins, who's the son of Steve Higgins, who is also an SNL writer, and Martin Herleely, who is the son of Tim Herleely, who had a hand in like Adam Sandler and even some of those movies, like the whole crew from the Spinal Tap crew. Tim Herleely was like mixed in with that crew. But these 3 guys are younger writers. They do like abstract comedy. And this movie is just basically like a very long skit of theirs from SNL. So if anybody listening watches SNL and enjoys those Please Don't Destroy skits, then you're going to enjoy the movie. It's basically a long form version of that with a lot of Conan O'Brien in there. And it was good. Just like Theater Camp, didn't have a huge plot, but a lot of funny moments, a lot of funny jokes, and a lot of good-natured fun. I always like comedies that were... One of the things they do in this comedy, I'm going to spoil it slightly just to kind of entice people, is one of the guys has like a girlfriend who's like trying to like get him away from the other guy. You know, it's like the evil girlfriend pulling him away from the crew. And like by the end of the movie, like the girlfriend is like part of the crew. So like it always just kind of has like this sweet, tender edge to their comedy. It's never mean-spirited. It always ends up very PG, very nice, although they say edgy things sometimes, if you kind of get that gist.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else did I watch? More comedies. Another comedy is one called, speaking of AU Bedebe.
Wait, are we still on 6s or we moved up to 7s?
We've booted up to 7s now. We're getting better and better as we go.
And yeah.
Yes.
I was just like, how many movies are you talking about before?
We'll go about 5 more until we get to yours.
Cool.
We're up to the 7s now. This is the last comedy, I believe, that I ranked in here. And there's one called Bottoms. Have you heard this one, or are you familiar with it?
I've seen it.
Oh, you have seen it. Okay. What did you think of it?
Didn't like it. I thought it was very overrated. Everybody seemed to think it was so funny, but I was like, I didn't find it that funny.
Okay. I didn't know anything about it. I was completely unaware of it. I just knew that AU was in it, and I'm a big fan of hers. So me and Heather were very pleasantly surprised by it. This was like Heather's favorite movie of the year, I believe. She's already watched it again. She loved it. I liked it, just like these other comedies. It's absurdist. This one is very absurdist because it's not really rooted in reality at all. It's like a high school comedy, like really gone awry. Edgy, really edgy comedy, kind of gross comedy a little bit, but still, I mean, I thought the spirit was good, and I really appreciated the writing of it because there was a writer-director, and it was one of the girls that was the leads, because there's 2 lead girls, AU Abedeme and Rachel Senote. And Rachel Senote is the one who actually wrote the film, and it was her concept. And if I'm not mistaken, she's been like in a lot of other films. Like she's young.
Oh, yeah.
She's like a very young actress, but I believe
she's up and coming.
Yeah. The first time I saw her was like she played in the HBO show High Maintenance, and she played like the dude's niece, and she came to town and spent the day with him. And it was like a one-off episode. And that's the first time that she caught my eye because she was so like natural and like a little kid, like playing off of like this weird stoner dude. And their energy was like so funny and like so natural. And that's how she is in all of her roles. I've never seen her in anything else though. What else has she done?
Yeah, her coming out role was Shiva Baby.
What's that?
Shiva Baby or Shiva Baby. It's another comedy, which is genuinely funny, where this girl goes to a Jewish funeral service with her parents. And at the funeral, there's like her sugar daddy who's married. She doesn't really seem to be there, but she runs into all these people she knows at this event. It's this funeral, but it's all these awkward things. Like she meets her ex-girlfriend, and then her sugar daddy's there with his wife, and she can't leave because her parents are like, you need to stay for this service and be part of the community. So it's a lot about the Jewish community, the Jewish experience, and it's genuinely funny. And then Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. She was a character in that very funny slasher flick where they all go to ginormous kind of cabin in the woods situation. And then there's some murderer amongst them that's killing everybody off. And yeah, she's funny. And I will say, I sounded really grouchy before. The movie, I thought it was like a sweet, like Misfits story, but I didn't find it that funny. I liked the sweetness about it more. Like, okay. But I didn't, you said the writing. I just thought it seemed a little like, it's somebody who's writing for like SNL, and they're kind of like a skit writer trying to make a movie. And that's not always an easy transition. But, I always like a misfit story. And it's, these girls trying to start a wrestling team. Is that what they're doing?
Fight club. Female fight
club. But it is a fight club, but they're trying to make it a legitimate club also. It's like a extracurricular activity.
I will say too, this movie almost lost me in like the first 10 or 15 minutes because I wasn't with the tone immediately, but I kept watching, which I'm glad I did because the story definitely got better. Because I'm kind of guilty of that. Like if I'll start watching a movie and if I don't like the tone or something. If the lead character is like wooden, I just won't even give it a shot. So I wouldn't be a very good film critic. I'd have a lot of like like unwatched films on my docket. Let's see. I also gave a 7. Two more 7s. I gave a 7 to Asteroid City. Of course, that's a Wes Anderson film, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, Wes Anderson.
I thought that was that dude. It looked like his kind of work, didn't it? I mean, it was a typical Wes Anderson film. I mean, I like all of his movies. I gave it a 7. I mean, I like it. I liked the film within the film quality of it. I always like the way his setting is. I didn't think it was like the most like engaging film. It didn't like, I mean, talk about Wes Anderson films. I'm definitely the guy who likes his early stuff and don't like his later stuff as much. And I still stand by that, which doesn't mean that I don't still enjoy watching a Wes Anderson film, because it kind of still gives me the same Wes Anderson feeling, you know? So I give it a pass. And I enjoyed watching it. How about yourself?
We're the same way about Wes Anderson. I like his earlier stuff better. But I will say I'm a late to the game Wes Anderson fan. Like I didn't start out watching a lot of his stuff. I watched, help me out, Steve, the name of his first movie.
Bottle Rocket?
No, not Bottle Rocket. Then the second movie.
Rushmore.
Yeah. A coworker of mine, like that's her favorite movie. And so another friend of mine, different friend, was doing a Wes Anderson speculative where he was going back and he was asking different critics to watch one movie and do an essay about it. So cool. I picked Rushmore because I'd never seen it. So that was only like a couple years ago. And I had seen like scattered Wes Anderson movies, but I was like, this guy's just weird. But yeah, he did the French Dispatch the year before. And my problem with that movie, that was interesting, but I couldn't understand what anybody was saying because his actors talk so fast.
That's right.
So I was hoping I'll watch it when I have captions. I can watch it and maybe understand what they're saying and be smart enough to get the humor of this story. But with Asteroid City, I liked the production design because, of course, I like mid-century Americana stuff. So that was interesting. It looks very much like a retro atomic retro camp. They're in the middle of looking for alien life, in the middle of the desert. So it's very much a theme I enjoy. But I think once again, it was just like the way he has his actors read things with no emotion at all. It just does not resonate with me.
It's one of those things where when I watched Bottle Rocket when it came out and loved it so much. And then when he did Rush, I mean, it was one of those things where I was waiting for his movies to come out and then going to see them in theaters, and like pretty much all of them up until like The Life Aquatic, I think, or maybe The Fantastic Mr. Fox or somewhere around there. They all satisfied. And I think somewhere around that era is like where I kind of dropped off, and maybe Squid and the Whale might be like the era that I didn't really watch anything past that. Because I know there's like at least like 4 or 5 of his movies that I have not seen. Like I'm looking at his list right now and I'm seeing Poison, The French Dispatch, Isle of Dogs, The Rat Catcher, The Swan. I haven't seen any of those movies, but everything up like, the Grand Budapest Hotel, all that stuff. And anytime I see his movies, it's very much like a Richard Linklater. It's like I kind of know what I'm wanting to get, and then I'm usually satisfied with what I got because it's kind of like what I expected. Mm-hmm. I don't know. He's always just been one of my favorites that has always caught my eye. So it's like he hasn't disappointed me too bad at this point.
Well, he's got a style. It's Wes Anderson when you see it.
Yeah, and he says that his style is based after Stanley Kubrick, I think is who he attributes that to. I don't know.
Did you see Wes Anderson's shorts collection that came out this year?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. I
got to see that.
Yeah, they were all The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. It's based on a Roald Dahl. He actually did 4 different Roald Dahl short stories, adapted them as shorts on Netflix.
Oh.
And they're all together. They came out this year. One of them was nominated for the Oscar for live action shorts and won it last night, I will say.
Oh, congrats.
So, if you like Wes Anderson, you should check out those as well.
I guess I will. Yeah, I'm looking for something else to watch now. Right now, Heather's in there watching American Fiction. That's what we started watching tonight before I came in here. So that I don't know how that would have ended up. I only saw the first like 15 minutes of it. So I don't know how that's going. But yeah, I'm very interested in that. I will check that out. Asteroid City. Next up, number 7 I should have gave it higher, but I gave it a number 7 for some reason. Society of the Snow. That is the story about the fellows, the team of athletes from Paraguay. Is that right? A team of athletes that get stranded from an airplane and they have to survive in the wild. And they live. It's a true story that happened in 1973. I want to say Paraguay, but
Uruguay.
Yay, I got it right. Okay.
Uruguay, not Paraguay, but close
Uruguay.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just alter my words so it sounds like I said Uruguay every time. Have you seen Society of the Snow?
Yes, I have.
It did not make your top 10, though. I'm surprised.
I saw it after I made the top 10.
Aha. So would it have made your top 10?
I can't say at this point because I would have to boot something off, of course. So,
ooh, yeah, that's a tough call right there. Okay, yeah, the top 10 list stays. Nobody's getting booted. Yeah, this is like, there's another film that's exactly like this. It's about the exact same story. It's a one-word film. Alive. There you go. This is definitely superior to Alive. This seems like you're there with the guys, and they do a great job of reenacting those photos that you see. And I felt claustrophobic. I felt scared. I felt cold. I mean, I should have given it more than a 7, but that's what I gave it, was a 7. Maybe because I don't want to see it again because it was an uncomfortable watch.
Yeah. 7 seems low to me, Steve-O. But
yeah, I'm sorry.
I liked how for this movie, since I didn't put it on my list, I won't get to talk about it later. But I feel like them having actors that were from that part of the country really helps.
Yeah.
And just, there's a huge, I don't know if it was I never saw Alive, but this movie also had a huge focus on spirituality, and there's many speeches about it, but a lot of the characters are like staunchly Catholic. And so that plays in so much about whether they're willing to participate in the eating of their comrades, and how they kind of turn it into an allegory for communion later on, saying like, just so it had a strong spiritual thread, which, I respond to also. But it was very realistically done. And yeah, I thought it was an excellent movie. And so did the Academy, as it was nominated for international feature, did not win, but obviously everybody respected it a lot as well.
Okay. Yeah, it should have won some stuff. You're right. And if I did have a top 10 list, it would definitely be in my top 10 list. Even though I gave it a 7, I'm looking at my list here. I don't really have a whole lot of high numbers. So, I mean, this is a movie that I enjoyed more so than any other. I'm down to like my last 2 here. They're at the top of my list. First up, I know it won some awards last night. Poor Things with Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo. I absolutely loved that movie. I think it was well-deserved of Best Actress. I mean, everybody was great actresses, but I was just stunned. I'm going to tell you a theater experience I had with this movie, Lindsey, because I actually had a real experience. Because I told you before, like, I used to really be in the movies a lot, and then I kind of slipped out of it. And now I'm kind of slipping back into that world. I'm really enjoying my movie experiences. But Heather and myself went and saw this maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago at a local theater here in Richmond. It's called a Bow Tie Cinema, and it's like based out of an old like welding factory. So it's been converted into a theater. It's really cool. And there was not a whole lot of people there. And the reaction from the audience, the 2 guys that were like down to our left, and there was 3 people that were up to our right. And it was obvious that none of these people like really knew what they were in for. They thought they were just going to go see a movie. Because the whole time there was like all these reactions, like visceral reactions from people in the theater, which it kind of like half annoyed me because it was like, what's so disgusting about that? I don't know. It was just a different person's reaction. So it kind of annoyed me, but it more just enhanced the experience, I think. Just knowing that they were so uncomfortable, but me and Heather were loving it so much. Heather said that when she was in the bathroom after the movie, like 2 of the people were in there and they were like, having that old argument, like, whose idea was it to see this movie? It was one of those kind of arguments. So that's who was in the theater with us at the time. But we were entranced. Like, I loved everything about this weird film, and it stuck with me. And I can't wait to watch it again. And I can't wait to hear what you think about it. I know it won some awards. Have you seen it yet?
I have seen it, and I liked it more than I thought I was going to. I had heard the movie was all about sex, and there is a lot of sex in the movie. But I ended up being, I think you used the word charmed or enchanted just now, and I feel like that's a good word. I was charmed by Bella and just like her growth and the fact that I just felt like it was like the whole human experience.
Right.
She's this child's brain in a woman's body, and the brain is learning at a much quicker rate than it would as a child. And so she's going through the whole human experience very quickly. She's a teenager, then she's sort of coming of age and an adult and maturing much faster than the people around her, just because she has that open mind and spirit to the people around her. And so it was at times a little uncomfortable to watch. I think probably, especially when she works in the brothel. So it's interesting. Like, I'm torn about it. I think I've told people before, I have a movie club at my church, and I send them an email every week and tell them like what movies are coming out and which ones I think they should watch. And one person noticed, because I had mentioned all the Best Picture winners that were in theaters, and she said, you didn't mention Poor Things. And she asked me what I would tell her about watching the movie. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to be really honest with you. Because they're not teenagers. They're all adults. They're young adults. But they were like, Mom, you're not going to want to see it. There's too much sex in it. And so I was like, I told her like exactly what happens and kind of why. And she appreciated my honesty. And I was like, maybe you might want to watch it when it comes out on rental, or when you're in a situation where you can turn it off if you want to, because some people are very uncomfortable watching sex in a movie. And as like a sister in Christ, it's my job to be like, I told her I enjoyed it, the movie, and that I thought it was of value. But it's not, I don't feel like it's for everybody.
Okay. I guess I feel completely differently about it because I didn't know what to expect going in. So like the sex was like, it didn't stick out to me. It didn't become like a main thing, especially the way it was handled. It was, they handled like every aspect of sex you could possibly handle, because this main character was very inquisitive and would ask questions that most people don't normally ask. And so she forces her co-stars to like answer these uncomfortable questions in a very frank way. And I just kind of found that aspect of it really interesting. It wasn't like, oh boy, we're watching people have sex. It was more like what her experience with it was. So I don't know. For me, I took away steampunk from me. Like I took away steampunk vibes from it, because that dominated my brain, is like all the weird inventions and mashups and just strange visuals that were happening on the screen.
Yeah. I was at an Oscar party last night, and it wasn't all Christians there. And I and one other lady were the only two people that finished Poor Things. Like everybody else said they left in the middle of the movie.
Oh my God.
I don't think everybody had the same experience.
Okay.
I think for some people it's a trigger.
Oh, okay.
But like, you're right. It's not, the sex wasn't used to like turn people on. I mean, a lot of it's really awkward, but
right.
Probably the most awkward is when the man brings his sons in. It just,
yeah, they're taking
some
notes.
of it. Yeah. I think some of it maybe wasn't completely necessary, but like you said, I liked the characters. I liked the world building. I liked the score. The cinematography was great. The costumes were beautiful. Emma Stone was wonderful. Mark Ruffalo was hilarious.
Oh my God. The best I've ever seen him, I think. I mean, I loved him in that role. That's like a role I've never seen him play, that type of person before. And it was so fun watching him in that role. I mean, I take away Emma Stone, and that's because she led the film. But anyway, we talked enough about that. Let's move on to the next movie. Mark Ruffalo's funny. What can I say? All right. And I saw one more movie. That's the last movie I saw. Top of my list. I liked it even more than Poor Things. Poor Things, by the way, I gave it 10 out of 10 stars, Lindsey. I loved it. Dream Scenario also got a 10 out of 10. If I could give it a 10.5, I would have, but I was not able to. I just saw Dream Scenario recently. Actually watched it 3 times. Very much into it. It's very much, I don't want to say it's like my movie of the year, but it's definitely among my top 3. Nicolas Cage in this role, he plays a nondescript professor who somehow ends up in everybody's dreams. When I say everybody's dreams, I mean everybody in the world's dreams. So he, of course, gets some fame from that. The movie carries on from there in a sort of like a horror theme, I suppose. It kind of turns into a horror movie after a while. For myself, anytime you have a movie that involves dreams and it does it well, like I'm on board. I was really into Dr. Sleep. That was another one of my favorite films. So, of course, the dream sequences were fantastic in this movie. Nicolas Cage, he got lost in this role. I forgot it was Nicolas Cage. He has a tendency to do that sometimes. Like most films, I don't like him. And like occasionally, like for Steve Barnes, for like 1 out of every 4 films, he's just completely amazing, like my favorite. And then for those other 3 out of 4 films, I'm rolling my eyes the whole time. He did it great in this one. Obviously, I loved it. Have you seen it yet, Lindsey?
Yeah, I did see it. As a Cage completionist, it's my
I forgot about that.
duty to watch every Nicolas Cage movie ever made.
Okay. Oh, so I said bad things about Nicolas Cage just now. I'm so sorry. You can, here's your time to rebut. Okay.
Oh, that was funny. No, I mean, it's like not everybody likes Nicolas Cage, but he's certainly an icon. He had a really funny, he was one of the presenters last night. He wasn't up for any awards, but he was a presenter as a former Best Actor winner. They had each of the people that was nominated, an actor or actress came out and made a speech about them, about how well they had done in their role. And he did the speech to honor Paul Giamatti, who was nominated for The Holdovers Best Actor. And he was complimenting on him of his ability to like wear the lazy eye the whole time. And so that when he performed this movie, he was blind in one eye because he wore this lazy eye. And he was like, would I do it? Heck yes, I would do it, of course, but it was just really funny because he's known, he gets lost in his roles. I did not love it as much as you. I liked it. When I'm in a movie where I feel like the character some people love it. This is a movie where the character Nicolas Cage plays, named Paul, he is basically this hangdog dude that everybody despises, and he kind of plays into it and lets himself be despised. So he has this moment of fame and tries to capitalize on it. But I don't like these movies where basically like somebody just gets dogged the entire movie because it feels so negative and hopeless. Yeah. And it's hard to sit through it. And I thought this movie was really depressing. That's probably the same reason why I don't like a movie that came out this year you may not have seen called Beau is Afraid. It's another movie where basically like one dude is like a loser the whole movie and everybody hates him. And this starts out with him being despised and it ends with him being despised. And just not enjoyable for me.
Well, as a depressive, I like those type of movies. I like them a lot.
Funny. I was like, why would that be?
Because you're watching somebody on film who's worse than you. So, I don't know. I'm just drawn to that kind of thing, I suppose. And I must tell you, Nicolas Cage and Paul Giamatti, I am for life blind in one eye. So take that. I can play your role. No problem. It's easy.
I did really want to see him in the Sprite commercial, and I thought he was missing out an opportunity to be in the Sprite commercial.
Oh, from Dream Scenario. That's right. But they made some pretty charming commercials towards the end. They did some advertising. Okay, well, that's all the movies that I've watched beyond your top 10. And of course, I have tried to watch all the movies in your top 10. I was not able to because of logistics. But do you want to go through your top 10 or should I head us down?
Well, no, I'll talk about them and then you can tell me your opinion on them.
Okay, cool.
So my number 10 is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, directed by Kelly Freon Craig. And this is a Lionsgate picture. I went into this movie with a lot of apprehension because often when young adult books that are, as a children's librarian, often young adult books getting adapted for the screen, especially as late as this is. I think that the book was written, I don't know, 70s, 80s, 60s. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's been a while. Often, you have your own picture about what the characters are going to look like and what's important about this story. And I felt like the adaptation, though, I enjoyed it. It made me very happy watching this. And the girl has these parents, Benny Safdie and Rachel McAdams, play like the dream parents of the millennium. They're just a very loving family. She has a good relationship with her grandmother. She meets these friends. And you were talking about one of the movies, how you said something about the humor is never being spirited. That's how I feel about this. It's just, there were like a couple of crummy people, but it wasn't like there was any supervillains.
Right.
It felt like sweet, but it wasn't sweet enough that it felt like an after school special. It did feel like emotionally resonant and, it drew out feelings from me. Especially there's, one of the parents is from a Christian household, one Jewish, they got married, and maybe their parents weren't happy about this solution. One of them seems to have come to terms with it. The other family hasn't. And so that's an upsetting thing for Margaret to deal with. And so that becomes one of the major plot points. And I just thought it was the same way that kind of theater camp. It was a happy, feel good, gentle, pleasant story that I couldn't really fault in any way.
Yeah, same here. I grew up a big Judy Blume fan. I was really into the Super Fudge books, and I was really into this book. Mm-hmm. I know it was geared towards girls, but I liked Judy Blume. I liked her tone, and so I loved this book. So I wasn't even aware this movie existed until I saw your list. So I was pretty excited about that. And I gave it a 9 out of 10. I absolutely loved it. It was, out of all my movies, if I were to have like a top 10 list, this would come in number 4 out of my top 10 movies of the year. I mean, I liked a lot of it. The adult characters were believable. Like even the characters that were like supposed to be like the bad guys or whatever, the parents that were not around for the mother, even they were like played, as not necessarily the bad guys. You kind of understood their point of view. I thought it was interesting that it had like the same Cat Stevens song from 1899. So of course that caught my ear when they played that song. Did you not catch that?
You mentioned it. I saw it in the email, but I don't know what Cat Stevens song you're referring to. And if I pulled it up, I'd recognize it, but...
Yeah, let's go back to 1899, episode 7. At the end of the episode, when the boat comes up after Yingli has done her thing, and then they come aboard, and that Cat Stevens song starts up where he says something like, I never wished for any water. I never wanted water is like what the general refrains of the song is. Yeah. And I think that's why 1899 used it. Anyway, same song here. They used it for Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Set in 1970. I don't have anything else to add other than the fact that I loved it. The lead character, like the kid actors were awesome. That's a hard thing to do, is have like kid actors in a movie that do like a really convincing, good job. Because a lot of times they'll tend to overact or underact. They don't act natural. I've seen more movies of like kids acting unnatural, acting like movie kids. And when I see kids like acting in a more natural way, in a more natural speech pattern, talking to each other, it helps the movie be more believable. And it helps me tune into it better. If I'm like watching like line, like you said about Wes Anderson, about the characters are like reading their lines off the page. And I think that you're right about that. I enjoy a more conversial script, I suppose. And that's what this had.
Well, plus, even though it's about tweens and girls that are kind of wanting their period that age, that it was entertaining for adults is just impressive in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Did Heather watch it with you?
Yeah. Yep. She didn't like it as much as I did. And then, like, apparently I asked Charlotte 100 times if she would watch it, and she never did. So maybe she'll watch.
It's too fresh for her.
I guess so. But she was just annoyed that I even suggested a movie for her to watch. So
Yeah.
You know.
In my little mini review, I compared this to a Jane Austen movie because I feel like those are so universal. Everybody seems to love them. You can watch them, adults and teens both love, Pride and Prejudice, and it's just kind of ingrained. And this surpasses all ages, I would say.
Yeah, it was a winner. I liked it.
Okay, so number 9 was Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Mr. Martin Scorsese. It's currently on Apple TV Plus and was put out by Paramount Pictures. Let's see. How do I start with this one? So this movie had, obviously, being in my top 10, it was a movie that I thought was well done. It was another experience movie. I value experiences. So when I go to the theater and I'm sort of taken away on a journey and I'm not aware that I'm watching the movie. Gotcha. And that's impressive for this movie with how long it is. But, I was brought into this world. I did listen to the audiobook like many people did, or read the book before they saw the movie. And it was, very Martin Scorsese in that it was about a community in crisis and there's crime, rampant crime going on. And there's sort of an investigation about who committed these crimes, morally ambiguous characters. But yet, Martin Scorsese also does movies like Silence, not The Silence, where it's more contemplative and highlighting a culture. And so in this case, they were highlighting the Osage culture and showing us what that was like, what their experience was like in this country. I did appreciate how, I heard originally they were going to make this movie. The book is more about the FBI investigation. So when they adapted the movie, they put the focus more on Ernest and Molly and their relationship. So they drew attention to that. But in the end, I feel like a fault of this movie is that it stayed in Ernest's perspective and he became the main character. Now, maybe Martin Scorsese didn't feel like, I'm not Osage, so I can't really make an Osage experience movie. I can bring their perspective in and make sure that their voice is heard, but my main character is still going to be a white guy because I'm white. So maybe he didn't feel like he was the person to tell that story. But that was sort of a flaw for me in that it left who I thought was the most compelling character, which is Molly. She sort of disappears in the middle of the movie. And I just thought her performance was so impressive that she's not speaking all the time, but she just portrays with a look, with a glance, with emotion. She portrays so much in her person. And that was just like, she was a riveting presence on the screen, even though she didn't have a lot of lines or she wasn't the person to talk a lot. So I just thought it was a very intriguing movie, an important chapter in American history that I'm glad was highlighted. I would like to see a different version of this story maybe made by an Osage director one day. So that's the main fault I have with it. But I thought it was compelling storytelling. So
I need to read the book because I heard about this movie before I saw it. So I read up as much about the situation in history as I could before I saw it. So I would, kind of be on board with it. And I would like to read this book. I did not like watching this movie. I wasn't riveted by it. I'm looking at it from a moviegoer perspective. Like, it led me to learn about the Osage, and that's great. And that's what the point of this movie is. But as for the movie itself, didn't love it. Lily Gladstone, I keep hearing how great she was. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. I'm being honest. Did my mic go out?
Mm-mm.
Okay, good. I was like, oh no, I'm saying a negative thing here, and like I'm getting karma'd for it. But yeah, it just wasn't riveting to me. I didn't love it. To me, it was another long Martin Scorsese movie, and I think he's fine. I think he's a fine director, and these actors he picks are fine. Just not for me.
I will say, I like Leonardo DiCaprio as much as the next person. I thought his character was interesting too, in that it's almost like he's convinced himself he really does love Molly, but how can you love someone you're drugging? It's like he was told by his uncle to take on this persona to win this woman's heart so that they could get the money. And it's almost like he's played his role so much that he's even convinced himself that he loves her. So I did think that was an interesting perspective because he's supposed to be sort of ignorant, and you have to wonder, like, what was his real thought process underneath the guise, what his motives really were. So that, that there were some intriguing aspects about it. I can understand not everybody's going to love it, so I don't fault you for it, Steve. I really don't, buddy.
I gave it a 5.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I gave it a 5 out of 10.
That's basically a D.
Yeah, that's D material. Yes.
We can move on then to my number 8, which is How to Blow Up a Pipeline, directed by Daniel Goldhaber, a Neon picture.
Yes.
I watched this actually pretty early in the year. So I think it came out in March, like about a year ago from today. So it came out pretty early in the year. Maybe not quite that early, but March,
it was
April.
Because you wrote a thing about it, and you intrigued me to watch it. And I haven't been able to watch it because it's been, you have to pay to watch it. And I think I still had to pay to watch it. I had to pay to watch some of these movies on this list. But yeah, like you were like an early torchbearer for this movie.
Yeah. So it was, you could call it a heist film about a group of people that decides to blow up a pipeline. And it's interesting, this being adapted from a book, a nonfiction book, which is very much kind of a persuasive essay, where the guy is basically making an argument that the time for trying to convince people with writing and peaceful process is done, and he wants people to take a more active approach to stopping these kinds of things from happening, the effects of oil on the environment. And
sounds very Abby Hoffman-ish.
Yeah, so it has like this motley crew of people who aren't necessarily friends, but they all share this common goal that they want to stop this pipeline from destroying the environment.
Yes.
So the movie kind of is them going through this process of, we're going to blow up this pipeline. But during the movie, they kind of go back and show almost like the movie Lost, they're in the island, they're on the island, but yet they have these flashbacks of like, how did they get there? And they choose strategically which people's story they're going to drop where, so that kind of the last 2 stories are the most intriguing and make you kind of question things a little more even. So, and regardless of if you agree with his concept of like, yeah, you need to start blowing up things and taking action, I maybe like don't agree with that, but I still thought the movie itself was really interesting and riveting, Steve. Maybe you thought it was more riveting than Killers of a Flower Moon, but
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's my basic thoughts about it. What did you think, Steve?
It reminded me of, did you ever see the movie Band of the Hand from the 80s?
No.
It was like a Michael Mann movie. The same guy did like Miami Vice. And it's this movie. It's a band of kids that aren't friends with each other. They're brought together because they're all misfits. In this movie, Band of the Hand by Michael, I'm pretty sure it's a Michael Mann film, but I'll just keep saying Band of the Hand. It's definitely Band of the Hand. They're troubled youths. They come together under this one mentor that guides them. The mentor, goes away, and the kids have this thing in common where like this drug deal, it's a very Miami Vice-ish kind of thing. And this drug dealer is like the one who's like ruining everybody's lives, and he's doing this bad stuff. So the whole movie is like a heist movie about how they're going to blow up the drug dealer's place, how they're going to do it without hurting people, etc. It is this movie, except it's like a 1980 movie and everybody's dressed like rock stars in Band of the Hand and stuff. Yeah, this movie, they talk about the fact that they'll be viewed as terrorists. So I guess you could call them like ecological terrorists, I suppose. And that's a theme of the movie, is like, how will they be viewed by other people? Will people understand what they're doing? But yeah, they are trying to do it without hurting people. And I do like the way that the story unfolded, so you kind of got an ending that you weren't expecting. It seems like the whole time it's like, okay, they're going to blow it up. It's going to blow up, the end. But it doesn't, there's a little twist to it that makes it worth watching. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I liked it more so than some of these other movies. Yeah.
We've already mentioned that they're not all friends, but we didn't necessarily say they're not all from the same political party either, which is an aspect I really liked. As you would expect, like, oh, these are all going to be like, liberal, tree huggers.
Right.
But there's at least one character that's like, I'm like a rifle carrying, Bible believing gentleman, So I thought that was one of the more interesting aspects too.
I think he was a necessary character. I think if he wasn't there, it would have been a different film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so the next movie is a straight up horror film, and was actually the only horror film that really liked from 2023, which is sad because usually I have several, and this was the only one that I thought was creative enough to be a top 10. So it's called When Evil Lurks, and it's directed by Damien Rugna, and this was put out by Shudder. And it's a alternative history where it's an alternate Argentina. And you have these possessed beings that are so prevalent in society that there's even a job for people that takes care of them known as the cleaner to exorcise them. And a cleaner gets sent to a home where there's supposed to be one of these possessed beings, and he ends up not being able to take care of it the way that he's supposed to.
Right.
And so this wealthy landlord, sends two of his workers to take care of it. And it's a road trip movie as they are trying to get this job done. Because part of the issue is, since it's a person possessing people, it can jump from one body or being to another. So they have to try to chase it down. Yeah, I just thought it was really surprising movie. It was a movie where, a lot of times, like in horror movies, when it comes to horror movies, people don't want to see kids get hurt and they don't want to see animals get hurt.
Right.
So this director was bold enough to not be afraid to do either one. So it was a shocking movie in that way. And also they had this really smart approach to violence, that things that happen sort of off screen. And so I know. Yeah. Well, Steve, hold on a second. Okay. In American horror movies, I feel like when stuff happens, like they're like, okay, the knife is going to go in right here and we're going to see bloody entrails everywhere. But in the case of this movie, you kind of see like things slightly after the point of contact. So you're like, what just happened? And the person's looking through the window, and you're almost looking through the window like, what are we looking at? Because you hear things happening that you don't see. And like things are under the table and over the window. And like, so I wasn't saying all the violence was off screen, but it sort of takes a creative approach, and it kind of knows how when it comes to horror, like when the movie The Cat People, for instance, back when the black and white version was done, you used to have this thing where like something's happening over here and all we see is the shadow on the wall. Right. So you're sort of imagining a lot of the violence. Now, it wasn't to that extent. There is violence on screen, but I just feel like it sort of makes you kind of see what you're trying to see what's going on, then you do. So it just has an extra power to it. And this is not just violence for the sake for a horror movie, just for the sake of being like, oh, there's possessed beings, whatever. It's also an issue driven, and that is trying to make a point about like pesticides that are in the ground. And is represented through this, like how these zombies are getting made is about like there's stuff that's poisoning the earth, and it's because of the exploitation of poor people. So there's a lot to say about like poverty and classism in this movie too. So yeah, I thought a lot of really good storytelling went into this movie. What did you think, Steve?
I mean, world building. I know they're going to make more of these because this is like they created this whole world where they have like these people and this society that's aware of it. And they've already established some characters and some territories. I mean, we're going to see more of these. Absolutely. There's no way we cannot. And they have like these specific rules. They're like, here's the 7 rules to like getting rid of these guys. And they have like a actual list of rules, which good horror movies always, Scream taught us that good horror movies always have to have sets of rules. And this was the same. Now, what's interesting to me is that I get my movie advice almost primarily from you and from Who Charted. And you don't listen to Who Charted. Is that correct? Have you ever heard Who Charted before?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. It's 2 comedians, Howard Kramer, Brett Morris. Howard Kramer and James, the Marshland Monster, do rap together. They're getting ready to release an album. So that's the connection there. But Brett Morris, he's involved in movies. Have you heard the movie Destroy All Neighbors, which is a splatter comedy that's out now, like an underground horror movie?
Yeah, I've heard the name of the movie.
Okay, so Brett Morris is the guy who scored that movie, did all the music and did the soundtrack for it, just to give you some perspective. He said, and I like I said, I get a lot of my advice from him and Howard Kramer about movies because they seem to like the same type of movies that I like. So the first week that this movie came out, When Evil Lurks, Brett was talking about it immediately because he loved it too. And he said the same thing you said. And he convinced me. And you just put the hammer in the nail there. Because Brett was like, yeah, this movie is so cool because what they do is they don't show you the violence. The violence is off screen. So you're kind of not really seeing it. And then Lindsey says the same thing. So I'm like, cool, this movie is safe. It's not safe at all. It's really gory and there's some really gross stuff happening. So I was really taken aback by that, that both of y'all said that. And then I'm watching all this stuff and I'm like, I don't know if I'm watching the right movie. This is really gross. But we are watching the right movie. Everything else, I mean, I agree with everything you said, especially about the meaning behind it, the ecological impact. But I hated this movie. I hated it. I gave it a 4 out of 10, which is an F in my book. It's not a 1, because if it was a 1, I would have turned it off in the first 10 minutes, which I might have done if I wasn't doing this for a reason to watch all the movies. But yeah, I really hated this one. So yeah, that's my strong disagreement with you there. When Evil Lurks, I personally wouldn't recommend it because it made me really uneasy. There was a lot of just squeamish gore. Yeah, it was yucky. Yes.
I would love to know what, not now, but I would like to know later, you'd have to show me where there's gore. Cause I think the gore is in your head. That's what I'm saying. There's more gore in your head than is on the screen.
Well, I know I saw a dog shaking a little kid around by its head. I definitely saw that. And I definitely saw this big blob of blood and guts underneath of a stage when they pried up all the floorboards.
Yeah, there was a blob, but that's not the same as, okay, yeah, never mind. Definitions.
I wanted to throw up.
I mean, it's definitely gross. I mean, they carried the guy and he's kind of gushing out when they, carry the guy from the bed. I applaud
this crew though, because it's an original concept. It's definitely going to have more stories behind it. This has legs is all I can say.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to do sequels because sequels seem to be an American thing. They just have to have 500 sequels to everything. So
or prequels for this one to show when it started because we're in the middle of the action when this movie starts.
Yeah. All right. My next movie is number 6, Godzilla -1, directed by Takashi Yamazaki, which is done by Toho. It's the first Japanese language Godzilla movie that's come out in 7 years. And that's notable because, there's been Godzilla movies, American-made ones that I've gone to see and I thought were good, or at least good enough to see. But then when I saw this, I was like,
right.
Wow, this is so much more devastating to watch this movie, the Japanese-made one, than any of the American ones could. It makes them look just like cash grabs and not very heartfelt in comparison, because this kind of takes it back to the roots to start the movie at the end of the war. And a lot of the Godzilla movies, even the original Godzilla, they kind of start in post-war Japan. And this actually has a scene during the war even. So it's almost a little bit protocol breaking. And also the fact that we just, Oppenheimer came out this year about the atom bomb itself. And that's all fresh in our brains. And I don't know if that was just a fluke, just synergy happening, but seeing this so quickly after Oppenheimer was just an additional layer on top of that. I saw somebody put on Twitter, said they said has this been the first year that a movie and its sequel got won awards the same year? Because they were making it sound like Godzilla -1 was a sequel to Oppenheimer.
You're silly.
But yeah, there's a pilot that he's this ex-kamikaze pilot. And then after the war, he goes back into civilization and tries to build a new life. But he's just so riddled with shame from his past that he he's carrying that inside of him and gets a job and tries to settle down with a friend and a child he's raising with like a platonic female friend. So the plot is really sweet, but it's such a great movie. And I loved it. I saw it with a big group of friends that were like Godzilla people. None of us knew what to expect.
Okay.
And my local theater does all these Kaiju Quest movies. So for the past 2 years, like on occasions you'll go to this classic theater and you'll see these original ones. So, there's the Godzilla music and that finally kicked in the middle of the movie. So there's a lot I could go on about this, but I think that's enough for now. Those are some of the things I liked about it, Steve.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I downloaded it on like one of those pirated sites on my phone. But I couldn't watch it. It was like the quality was bad and the sound was bad. And it was just a bad way to try to watch a Godzilla movie. I watched it up until the point where he met that friend and the child and people were giving him shame. Like, why are you taking care of them? And I think that's around the point, like, because the next scene, I couldn't even see what was happening. And that's when I started going, I like this movie a lot. I really think I need to watch it when I can actually watch it. So I didn't watch the whole thing because the quality was poor. But I'm looking forward to seeing it because I absolutely liked what I saw. It had heart to it. And I'm not a Godzilla person. I liked it. I'm looking forward to it. The next one I also did not see. I'll tell you right now that I have no clue about this next film. Mm-hmm. So no luck. This is the only one I wasn't able to see.
Now, it was playing at 2 Richmond theaters.
That is correct, probably.
So you weren't willing to go see it in the theater.
That's a much bigger commitment in our opinion.
Poor Things?
That was a date night. We made a date out of it. Yeah.
Oh, well, this is our friend date, Steve, to talk about my movies.
All right. I'll let you down.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'll tell you what it is. I was kind of hoping maybe you'd pull the plug and go and spend that $12 on the theater ticket.
I did think about it. It just wasn't in the cards for me. But I am going to see it, though, because I vowed to see all the movies on your list. So I'm going to do that. So what am I going to see here when I see Origin? All
right. So the movie is called Origin, directed by Ava DuVernay, who directed Selma, which we've already talked about. This is based on a book that Isabel Wilkerson wrote called Caste. And the whole concept of the book is that this caste is the mechanism that more so than, not saying racism doesn't exist, but caste allows for racism as well as other types of injustice that happen in a quote unquote just society. So she found after the murder of Trayvon Martin, she was researching like why a Hispanic man deputized himself to murder a Black boy in an all-white neighborhood. Like that was kind of her big question. So she found connections between the Nazi Holocaust, Jim Crow South, the untouchables in India, and enslavement of African citizens, how that happened. So she researches these and finds similarities because she found this painting and basically when they were planning the Holocaust, they used Jim Crow laws as an inspiration to how they would plan this extermination of the Jews. And so the movie takes a different approach in that it kind of focuses on the person of Isabel Wilkerson herself, who's going through some different losses in her life. She ends up losing both a husband and her mother in a pretty quick amount of time. And as she's processing these losses, she's doing the research for this book. And so they show how maybe these losses and the connections she has with other people ended up influencing maybe the book itself and her to create like a space, like what was her headspace when she was writing this book?
Right.
And how did it take place? So as she's researching, we do see enactments of the passages in the book, but we're also focusing on her life and her own story. So in that description, it might be like, oh, this sounds really preachy or something. And it definitely is a message movie, but it's just done with such empathy and warmth. She ends up discovering or deciding like the antidote to all of this hatred is to find the humanity in other people. And so she has to do that. One of them that's really powerful is this repairman wearing a MAGA hat who's played by Nick Offerman, who plays like a pretty vital cameo in the movie.
So it's not a documentary then?
No, it's a narrative feature.
Okay.
But she visits, when she's researching, she goes to Alabama and she visits some of the places I did too.
Oh, neat. Okay.
So it's an important movie as well as a well done, beautiful movie. So I do recommend it.
Noted for me and the listeners. We'll check it out. I'm surprised it's not out to be seen. It's been out for a long time, right?
Yeah, it's just in theaters still. So a lot of times when they're having a theatrical run, they're not going to start putting it on streaming because they want people to buy tickets.
And that's why you chastise me for not doing so. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I'm with you now.
It should be out soon. I mean, I'm kind of surprised it's still in theaters because I don't think it's done well. I mean, it's done well with the ticket sales is what I'm saying.
Right. Did it do any showings last night in the Oscars?
No, it did not get nominated for a thing, which is another issue in and of itself. But,
what's up, Academy? Come on.
All right, so let's move on to my next movie. So the number 4 pick is Biosphere, directed by Mel Eslin. And this is what they call a twofer. It's got 2 people in it, the whole movie. Those people are Sterling K. Brown and Mark Duplass, who I admire Sterling K. Brown so much, but Mark Duplass is a genius. I like him in every single thing he's in. I feel like he's an underappreciated actor. There are a lot of people that do appreciate him, but, he's never won any awards. But he directs, he produces, he acts. And he's been in several of these twofers, and he can hold his own against anyone. And this is another big surprise. It's really hard to talk about this one without giving away much, but it's these 2 men live in a biosphere or a biodome, a self-sustaining home that one of them built when he realized the world was being destroyed. Maybe he read How to Blow Up a Pipeline and realized, things weren't going so well. So he kind of built this bunker, but it has food, groceries, it has koi ponds, it has all of this stuff so that it can help keep life sustained. So they're survivors, and they live in this biosphere, and it's like this buddy comedy, but it's sort of there's a twist in the middle that changes everything about their lives, and it's just a very unique movie. Yeah.
I'm more or less a Duplass brother fan. I like The Puffy Chair. That was a good movie. Did you watch The League when that was on TV?
No.
That was Mark Duplass's first thing he ever did. And I watched it only because I was a fan of another actor on the show, Paul Scheer. Paul Scheer played a character in that show. So that was my impetus to watch The League, which is not the type of show I would watch. It's about a group of guys who have a fantasy football league. It's a real raunchy comedy for adults, for sport guys. It's a barstool sports show. But yeah, Mark Duplass got his start on that. And that's where I first noticed him. And that's when I first started watching like his movies as they started coming out. His brother, of course, was on Transparent, which was a really great show on HBO. His younger brother played one of the characters on that. So I like Mark Duplass as well. I didn't enjoy him in this movie. I saw this as more like it was a concept film. And the concept I did not see coming at all. And I would encourage anybody to watch it just because it has a real fun twist about halfway through. And it goes into a real interesting place. So I can recommend it for that reason. But I just didn't get into it, I suppose. It just didn't hit it for me. I don't even know what it was. I thought that just their dialogue exchange sometimes, I wrote down here, that was an eye roller. I was rolling my eyes more than I was laughing. Of course, I was laughing some because, these are funny guys. But I don't know. It just didn't hit for me. I placed it just slightly above When Evil Lurks. So that's where it stood in my listings. Biosphere, I'm sorry to say. I thought it was filmed during the pandemic because it was a twofer. There's like a certain group of movies that came out between like 2022 and 2023 that predominantly feature like 3 or 2 or 4 like really famous people. And it seems like this could have been done during the pandemic. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been. It could have been. But yeah, I like quirky sci-fi. So it's in that category. He was also, I will highlight these other two movies that he was in. Mark Duplass, he was The One I Love, that's on Netflix with Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Hurley? No, couldn't
No,
be.
the weirdo.
The
Elizabeth that
weirdo.
always plays like psycho people. She was in like the one about pilgrim women. They're not pilgrim women, sorry. This is
What?
terrible. It's a TV show she was in, The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay, yeah.
Elizabeth
Moss.
Moss, yeah. Yeah, he's in it with her. It's a great movie. And also Blue Jay is the other movie he's in.
Yeah, that was a good one too. I
Yeah.
agree.
So yeah, I just think he's great. And so he gave the director's chair to Mel Eslin, who's a trans director. So that's all I'll say about that. Say much more about that would be a spoiler. But
yeah, I mean, there's not a lot you can say because it's better to watch it and see it unfold. And just because I didn't enjoy it doesn't mean that it's not worth a watch.
All right. So the next movie, my number 3 is The Holdovers, and number 3 is pretty high. I think at this point, it might not have been my number 3. Like at the time, I really loved this movie. So maybe this is the one I would have kicked off in favor of Society of the Snow. But I don't know if I would have kept everything in the same order.
Gotcha.
But it's like we're talking about now. I sort of can't remember much about this movie. Like I don't remember why I liked it so much now. But I mean, I remember things about it. So I can still talk about it. But it's not maybe as... Because I thought this is an instant classic. So I still think it's a holiday classic. Like maybe every Christmas I would want to watch this movie. But The Holdovers, right. This could be a threefer. I mean, there are other casts, but there's these 3 main characters of Paul Giamatti, Dominic Sessa, and Divine Joy Randolph. And I know I'm not saying her name correctly because they said it differently on the Oscars. I should say Oscar winner.
Yeah, she won.
Divine Joy Randolph was won for Best Supporting Actress. So this is about a grouchy teacher who gets handpicked to kind of babysit all the kids that are left over. At the private school, which is why it's called The Holdovers. And then a lot of the kids are like, oh, we're all going to go. They all get picked up to go on a skiing weekend. Mm-hmm. And he's the only one that doesn't get to go because they cannot reach his mom and she's on her honeymoon or something. This is before the time of cell phones.
Yeah, 1970. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he ends up being the 3 of them. Grouchy teacher, the student that's sort of his arch nemesis, and the school cook that are left at the school. And they have this Christmas to remember. So it's really funny and heartwarming, but it also has this strict dedication to looking as close to a 1970s movie as possible, including the branding, the pops on the screen, the sound design, the gritty look to it. So they really laid into that heavily and did what I thought was a fantastic job. So those were some of the highlights.
Yeah, Paul Giamatti was great in this too. Like, it's almost like he's a cheat code, in my opinion. Like, you throw him in a movie and the movie's going to be great. It's like a big cheat. Just throw Paul Giamatti into it. And I like this a lot. This movie, like Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, it's also filmed in 1970, but this feels like 1970. Like, it seems like the film stock they use, and like it's like in gritty, like snowy Boston. Whereas Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret is very bright and very sunny. And even though I think it's based in New Jersey, it just looks like California. It's very sunny and bright. Whereas this movie has more of like a dark not dark, but more of an edgy 1970s look to it. Also features that exact same song by Cat Stevens, which I figured out is called Seasons of the Sun, is what that song is called. It's in this movie. It's in Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. It's in 1899. So yeah, that movie is like always in my head now. Yeah, I don't know what else much to say that I can add other than, this was a great one. I gave this an 8. I don't know if I graded I graded the other ones too. Yeah. Gave this one an 8 out of 10. It was definitely like in my top, looks like it was in my solid top 5 right there. Yeah, I'm glad this actress won for best as well, because I really liked her and Paul Giamatti's like interaction with each other, and the way that he would kind of stand up for her, and like she would hear him standing up for her when she was not in the room. So it's like, that's always what you want to hear. Like, that's what I kind of took away from me. It's like, you always want to overhear somebody saying something nice or somebody defending you when you're not in the room with them.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I thought that was kind of a neat touch to that one.
It has some like memorable parts to it as well. Just like I wanted to have Cherry's Jubilee automatically after this movie. I was like, I want that, burnt dessert where you flame everything. I just want to make sure you know what I'm talking about because you're giving okay. Yeah, and you're like giving me a blank expression. But yeah, there's
my fault.
Music in the movie, also like, he has a book that he's written. So I thought it was kind of this generation's Dead Poets Society.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's why I was looking at you blankly, because I was trying to think of the name of the Robin Williams movie that this reminded me of.
Even though that's, one teacher inspiring a whole swath of kids. And
right.
This is just one, but it just reminds me of that, they say that if a kid that's has problems in their life and is not doing well, has one supportive adult, that they can make it, just one. And this Angus character ends up getting Paul in his cheering squad somehow, even though they sort of, Paul Giamatti plays Paul. That's the teacher. That's why I'm saying that. But he sort of views all of the kids as troublemakers. But what really upsets him about Angus is that he sees like, this kid's really smart, but he's being a troublemaker. But he's also at this boarding school that he doesn't want to be at, and he has a mother who's neglecting him in favor of the stepdad. So they do enough with these characters that they feel really believable, and you root for them. So
I felt like I was watching like an instant classic when I was watching this. It's like if this movie had come out, in 1980, it would have been like a VHS movie that people watched over and over and over again. It's that type of movie. I think, because it's 2023, 2024 now, I'm afraid it might not get as revered as it should. It is that type of movie, like the adult mentorship, coming of age, based in a school story that's like a classic. I'm just afraid it'll get overlooked just because of the time that it's coming out in with so many other movies around it. And it won't get replayed over and over and over again. And some kid's not going to have the DVD and be forced to watch it 10 times because there's no other DVDs in the house. One of those kind of deals. I wish this movie had come out earlier than it had.
Yeah. I mean, I'll certainly watch it again.
Same. What you got for number 2? I bet it's a good one.
Number 2 is Past Lives, directed by Celine Song. It's an A24 movie and is in half Korean, half English. So it was confusing enough that in my film critic group, a lot of people wanted to nominate this one. It did get nominated in the shortlist for Best International Feature. But I'm like, but so much of it is in English. I don't know, like, what percentage it has to be Best International Feature. But this is a childhood sweethearts who reunite as adults. And, when they were kids, they competed for the best grades. Then one of them, their family moved them across the country. And so they kind of lose touch, but then they find each other again through the magic of Facebook, video chat for a long time, and then again go their separate ways because they live so far apart and they're both dedicated to their personal goals. Then as adults, one of them's now married and then they reunite again. So could sound really schmaltzy, but it's a very naturalistic approach to the storytelling. And what really impressed me about this movie is that it's authentic and heartfelt, but it doesn't feel overly sentimental either. It feels very logical, like the characters are feeling things, but they're also making decisions that are best for them and not just getting swept away. And I was like, if this was an American-made movie, these characters would be like sweating and panting in some hotel room. But these two are like, we're going to be rational about this. We're going to see each other. I saw something online the other day that was talking about a trope that people are really liking, which is the slow burn romance, which isn't always, it's not even always a romance. It's more of a love story, which is like a romance without a happy ending.
Right.
But there's sort of this like the slow burn between these two people that you can just feel the passion between them palatably, like Ike and Mara on 1899, you know, but they're not touching each other, but you just feel the chemistry. That's what this reminded me of.
Ike, Mara, and Daniel. And so in this case, we do have like, there's the Arthur instead of Daniel.
Oh no, poor Arthur or Daniel.
I want to say first, yes, this is an A24 film. And also Dream Scenario and Poor Things are also A24 films. I didn't realize that until just now because you were talking about like, you know, who makes these films. And I was like, I should have done that. So like I peeked back a little bit. So my 3 favorite films of the year were all by the A24 production team. I think that says something about me, perhaps. So this movie was an A24 film. I absolutely gave this one a 10 out of 10. I like Dream Scenario just a touch more. So I think Dream Scenario is my number 1 film, but I don't know if number 2 is Poor Things or if number 2 is Past Lives. Like this movie just touched me so much. I loved it. I mean, everything about it, like the way it was filmed and the characters' dialogue and the simplicity of the story, but you know, how universal it was. And it's just like the conversation that Greta Lee and her husband have before she meets up with him is just like mind blowing. There's just a couple in bed talking about normal couple stuff. And it's just mind blowing stuff. Like I loved everything about this. The ending was great. Everything was great. Greta Lee. I'm like a new Greta Lee fan now all of a sudden. Like I'm in love with her, I think. I don't know. It's a problem. I was really into this. I'm not a crying person at movies, and I cried a lot. This was a movie. This was an A24 movie.
This is in the Celine Song, first time director, right?
Oh, yeah. Celine Dion did this one. That's right.
But if you go to oneofmystories.com to look at my write-up, I will say there's a really, really nice photo still from the movie. I have a picture for every movie. And I appreciate how Steve, you know, for Dark, you were saying how I choose good pictures. So I like to think I do choose good pictures. But if you look at the still from Past Lives, it's really powerful. And it's early in the movie. It's when the characters are like, they're moving. One of them's moving the next day. And they're kind of walking home from school. And one of them is going up a flight of stairs. The other one is staying level on the ground. And so visually, it's telling everything in the story that these two are going their separate ways. One of them's going up the stairs. One of them's, so they're even at different altitudes. So that's the kind of power of the visuals in this movie are very strong, as well as the story itself being heartfelt. She just used a lot of mastery of shooting for a first-time director.
I was so impressed. Yeah. Like the way the shot would linger and it would just be so meaningful. And like the way that the shots were angled, even like the bar scene at the end, I'm just thinking the way they shot that is just such a unique way to shoot. Like you're watching another couple from a table that you're eating at a different table. It just does it well. It doesn't look like a camera. It looks like you're hanging out with them.
Yeah, I'm glad you like this one.
Oh, man, a lot.
A sad that Past Lives did not get any Oscar wins. It should have won something.
I know, yeah. I was a little bummed about that. And I was like, Greta Lee deserves Best Actress. Come on. I don't even, were they nominated for anything?
I thought Past Lives was nominated for Best Picture, but
like straight up Best Picture? I hope so. It better have been. I'm going to beat somebody else. And I guess it's going to be you, Lindsey.
Well, the NC Film Critics definitely. So it was nominated for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay.
Sweet. Okay. Legit. All right. Usually the best films are overlooked. So
yeah. But definitely look for this one, maybe first. I don't know. If you have to pick one movie that, you know, if you haven't seen any of the movies on my list, watch Past Lives, because both I and Steve loved it.
Yeah, it's number 2 on your list, and I think it's number 2 on my list, too. Now, I already said Dream Scenario is number 1 on my list. So we're at number 1 on you. And probably the listeners by this point are like, they haven't talked about a certain movie yet. So what do you got for number 1?
It ain't Barbie.
It ain't Barbie. I haven't yet to see Barbie. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, my number 1 is Oppenheimer, of course. Best Picture winning Oppenheimer.
Oh, it swept, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It won a lot of things. It won Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, and some other stuff. I don't know. I can't. It didn't sweep. It didn't have. It wasn't Everything Everywhere All at Once that got like 10 awards or something.
Correct, but I mean, it was like the one that won the most awards this year, though.
Mm-hmm. It won a lot. I don't have the numbers, but that's okay. That's your department, Steve.
Sure, I got the numbers right here.
So my number 1 is Oppenheimer, and
whoop, whoop.
Saw it 4 times in the theater. So I
Impressive.
guess I had to give it to Oppenheimer. Saw it, one of those was in the IMAX 65 mil, and which is what it was filmed in. Which was in the it was shot in color and black and white. The black and white IMAX was specifically developed for Oppenheimer.
Right.
So it's the story of biopic about Robert J. Oppenheimer, the man who gathered a bunch of people together to build an atom bomb.
How to build a bomb, not blow it up.
How to build a bomb. Yeah, it has connections to Godzilla and... But of course, most people know what it's about by now, but it has this dual story thing because Christopher Nolan always plays with time and filmmaking. And so he filmed the movie, sections of it in color and black and white. The color sections are Oppenheimer's first person perspective, and the black and white is the objective perspective, or some people might think of it as the other guy's name, which I can't even think of his name now.
Oh, the Strauss?
Strauss, yeah, Strauss. So, we're seeing how the two of them remember these events differently.
Right, yes.
And sort of juxtaposing these two people together. One of them who, Oppenheimer brought people together, and then Strauss is a divisive, snake in the grass that's
yep.
sort of rendering terror wherever he goes. The movie even calls one of the sections. What is it they put on the screen, Steve? I'm saying like synergy, but that's
subtitle?
Not correct. What?
I don't know. I said subtitle. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's grasping at straws.
Maybe I'll look it up later. But anyway, it's the idea of putting atoms together versus
fusion.
Separating them.
Fusion?
Yeah, maybe that's it. I'm drawing a blank now. There's 2 words, and they're like, this dude is this, and this dude is that. And they put the words on the screen that they say what it is.
Okay.
The movie, I would say, okay, so it's immersive and it kind of brings you into this world. At the same time, I was a little lost the first time I watched it. So I had to watch it the second time, because the first time I'm like, what's going on? They throw you into this. It's not a trial. It's a hearing, but still you're like, you're learning about this kind of thing that happens in the middle. Then you go back and see like, okay, the building of the bomb, and then kind of what happens after. But one of the interesting little tidbits I want to share is that, Christopher Nolan's last movie was Tenet.
Right.
And what I thought was so cool is that in the middle of Tenet, they actually talk about Oppenheimer. And so it's almost a little cheat code about what is coming the next movie. And so it's like, oh, did they put something in Oppenheimer that would tell us what the next Christopher Nolan movie is somehow?
An Einstein movie.
Yeah. Einstein, or, because it's the chain reaction that could destroy the world is the way the movie ends. So it's like, yeah, who knows what it could be about.
But yeah, that's a neat little Tenet tie-in. Christopher Nolan rules in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead, Steve. I'll let you talk now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this definitely a well-made movie. It's definitely a Christopher Nolan movie. The dialogue did get kind of deep, and it is a tough watch. I think it's good to know a little bit about Oppenheimer and the story behind this before you go into it. Heather had some personal tie-ins with it where her grandfather actually was one of the individuals that worked on the bomb there. So he was part of that crew. So, Heather was watching it with misty eyes, like, oh, this is my history. Not really. But yeah, I didn't love it. I liked certain scenes from it, and I definitely respect it, but it didn't compel me the way I thought it might, because I was really excited about a Christopher Nolan movie. And about 2 years ago, Lindsey was like, you got to check out Christopher Nolan's Tenet. It's a great movie. And she was right. It was. I loved Tenet. This one just kind of didn't give me the same chills that Tenet did, I suppose. I think this movie might be more important than Tenet because you learn a lot more from it, and what you're learning is factual. And I think an important aspect to it, which when me and Heather were talking about it afterwards, and I was telling her that I was, kind of disappointed that I wish I'd liked it more than I did because I really like Christopher Nolan, that kind of thing. It's like one of these movies that I recognized it was a good movie, but it just didn't hit me right. And Heather reminded me, she was like, well, what about the whole, point of, Oppenheimer, because he, dabbled a little bit maybe in communism, and that kind of stained his career the whole time. That's what really stuck with Heather. She was really following that political storyline about how he was blackballed for his beliefs. Mm-hmm. And that really resonated with her. And she was, the whole time the movie was going on, she was kind of thinking about how it related to, how easy it is to get blackballed or canceled or whatever now because of your beliefs, and how that can be held against you. So that's kind of what she took away from it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I mean, I enjoyed it. I wouldn't object to watching it again, but only if somebody suggested it. I probably wouldn't do it of my own accord. So I'm really surprised. I mean, you saw it 4 times in the theater. That's, I don't know. If it was a shorter film, I could definitely do that. But because it was so long, mm-hmm. I don't think my attention span could handle it. So have you only seen it once? I've seen it twice.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, at least you saw it twice. I thought you were going to tell me you only saw it once. I was like, I mean, I loved the, the experience of watching it, even that very beginning section where when they talk about him in college, what Oppenheimer's life was like in college, and he's doing the thing with the poison apple, and there's, mm-hmm. He's in the college dorm, and you're seeing in his head the way he's thinking about things, his abstract thoughts they put on screen. Just, I don't know. I just found it so, it was so absorbing to watch it. And the actual, setting off of the bomb during the movie was, kind of a lean in moment where I just wanted that experience over and over again. And then, so I had only seen it 3 times, and I thought that was going to be it for me. And then when I was in Florida, then it was like, oh, you can go see one of these IMAX 65 theaters is right nearby where you're going to be. So I couldn't pass up the opportunity to see it again. And now I have a Blu-ray that I can watch whenever I want. Yeah, I just thought it was, I appreciate you telling me about Heather's experience too. Yeah, I found it interesting, that aspect also, that the way he gets treated afterwards, mm-hmm. how easy it was for people to dispose of him. Everybody wanted him there. And then as soon as it was inconvenient, then they're ready to just kind of leave him behind. But yet the scientific community still rallied behind him in a way. And I appreciated the fact that during Strauss's hearing, that guy came forward who was the Russian that even Oppenheimer had sort of, not always treated the best. He knocked his notepad, Rami Malek, he knocked his notepad out of his hand, but the guy came forward and was like, yeah, Strauss sucks. He's been, he didn't say it that way. He said it, he's like, he sucks. And he's been vindictive the whole time. And I liked how the scientific community rallied around him, because Oppenheimer had shown respect to everybody who worked under him. He appreciated people. And the words were, you mentioned fusion, as fusion and fission. So Oppenheimer was fusion and Strauss was fission. It's like he was planting malicious stuff the whole time. And then here, Strauss was this guy who had played the political game to make himself more important. Yep. And then at the end, he ends up getting rejected by the community because they see he's not a person of good moral character. And that was very satisfying in itself to see somebody get sort of canceled that you think deserves to be canceled.
I only have one more thing to add to that, to Oppenheimer, before we wrap up. And I have a very capitalist idea for Oppenheimer. Now, I know it's a successful movie. It's won the awards now, right?
Yeah.
And it probably made a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge success. They can continue that success with my idea. So people like myself, we loved that scene where they did like the whole bomb thing. And because that was like a really like, visceral, like all your senses were part of it. It wasn't just you were watching cool dialogue. It was like it was a neat moment. And it was a cinematic moment, so much so that Christopher Nolan got this weird technology and this, to make it happen. So my idea is any theme park you have across the country have an Oppenheimer bomb. And so like, you don't have to go watch the whole movie. You just go watch that part. And that part is right there. And you go in for like 3 minutes, you experience it, and then you leave. I think people would really dig that.
You better brand that idea. You better patent that, Steve, because
Christopher Nolan will not do something like this because he's more, he's not a capitalist. He's not into like this, Marvel universe kind of. Well, no, he is. He's a Batman guy. What am I talking about? Of course, he's a franchise guy. Yeah, I think I'm going to write him and like, I had this wonderful idea. I need 75% upfront, and then I don't know, how do you do this kind of stuff?
There's gotta be. I feel like there has to be somewhere in America a museum dedicated to this already. So I mean, I could be wrong, but did they reenact an atom bomb? I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of tone deaf, of course, to put it like in Disney World. And it's like, let's go to the Magical Mountain, then let's go here, then let's go watch the atom bomb go off, and let's go have ice cream.
Yeah, it could be a little problematic to have it as a theme park.
Well, half my ideas are.
But it's not a bad idea, Steve. And I mean, I think it would be interesting to have different stations. Like one station could be, when he climbs up the ladder and the bomb is loaded on the machine and they're all like, oh, we can't touch it. We have to touch it a certain way, like put the thing in there. So you could watch someone put the core in there and then hear the buzzing and everything. And everybody has to put their protective goggles on. And then that one dude's like, no, thank you. I will just slather this stuff on my skin. And
that's right.
That was Benny Safdie, actually.
Was it really?
Yeah, the same guy who plays the dad in Are You There? Me, Margaret.
He's also in The Curse with Nathan Fielder. He's like popping up everywhere, like in this last like couple years. Yeah.
And he was in The Mandalorian. Yeah, he's extremely talented. He and his brother made the movie Uncut Gems. And
That's right. Those kids. Yeah. Anyway, there's great movies of 2023. I'm really impressed. I went back and looked at some lists of like movies that came out in 2021 and 2022. And of course there's good ones, but I don't know. This is some pretty solid stuff. And out of this list, I found like 3 movies I'm going to take with me forever. Past Lives, Dream Scenario, and Poor Things. I mean, this is that year for me. And this is the year of Oppenheimer for you, obviously, because that's your number one movie. And after you've seen all these other movies, does Oppenheimer still hold the number one spot for you?
Yeah, I have to keep it at the number one spot. It's like, it deserves that. It was another experience movie. It was the most powerful experience movie I had that year. The year before that, I remember like when Dune Part 1 came out, it was that because it was such an immersive movie. But
was that 2023 as well? That was 2022, right?
That's like, it was actually
earlier.
2021. So I'm just saying, like, for instance, I wasn't saying like anything about this year. But yeah, Dune Part 2, is a pretty solid movie already for this year. Will it make my top of 2024? Who knows? But I definitely had an experience. But like the fact that I saw it 4 times and didn't get bored of it and would still want to see it again, I think that speaks for itself.
Absolutely. It's the year of it. Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining me for this, Lindsey. I didn't really assign you any homework this time. We just got to read off your list that you already had and go off of my list. Did I do okay with the movies that I brought? Did you like any of the movies that I recommended or that I saw this year?
Let's see. What's the question exactly?
Did I watch good movies? Did the other movies that I picked out that I watched this year, are they among the best movies of 2023, or are they just movies?
I mean, you pick some good ones that...
Like, I believe Society of the Snow is
Society
probably
of the
strong.
Snow, yeah, is a really strong movie.
But other than that, I think the rest of them are just kind of like random. Saltburn, which I didn't love, but that seemed to make a big hit among the populace.
Yeah.
But I think that you nailed it better on your top 10 list, which is available over there, oneofmystories.com. And you also just heard it, so just remember what you heard a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up, Lindsey. I know we always want to plug our song. We got our song out there in the woods somewhere that we recorded. It is getting played across the world. 50 countries right now, Lindsey.
Whoa, yeah, I was going to ask you what your numbers were.
Numbers aren't extremely well. I was expecting more because the song features vocals, and usually people like that and gravitate to songs with vocals more so. But no, it's just doing average. I was hoping I would get on some playlists early, but we're only on 4 editorial playlists right now, that's where our streams are coming from, or from those playlists. And so, it's out there. Our people are listening to it. We just need to get people who aren't our people to listen to it.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I've got 279 on SoundCloud.
Oh, you're talking numbers of streams here.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
All right.
I thought that I was, when I put it on SoundCloud, so then it would go on one of my on the podcast.
Yes.
So on Apple Podcasts, and it also goes on the Spotify. Well, I got nabbed from Spotify because my feed is a podcast feed, and they don't allow songs on a podcast feed.
Come on.
So yeah, they're like, we have taken this down. So sorry, not sorry, but
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but you have it up, so people on Spotify can listen to you. And so I actually, when I shared it with friends and family, I did share the Spotify link because I feel like Spotify is the more popular music listening outlet.
Yeah. Spotify and Apple by far dominate the market, it seems.
Yeah.
And yeah, my numbers aren't much more than yours. We've got about 416. So, we're almost at 1,000 people listening to us, which is okay. We're not here for the numbers, though. We're here for the love of the game. So, but yeah, did you have anything to plug besides the song, Lindsey, before we head out?
Well, I wanted to mention I did post a review of the first 2 episodes of Shogun, the mini-series.
I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a podcast. It was a written review. But I just wanted to plug that series. It's very well done. And if you'd like to read my 2-episode preview, it's not a recap. It's just a what to expect. It is on oneofmystories.com, so you can take a look at that. It's also linked in IMDb. So if you go to IMDb and click on critic reviews, you will find it right there. And I'm one of the first people in line because of being one of my stories.
Heck yes. I guess the other thing I can lead people to is there's a podcast out there. It's called Are You My Mother? And I was on there recently talking about Yellow Jackets, which is a show I thought about recapping, doing the whole 2-season recap. I decided not to, but luckily I got to be on Are You My Mother? And we recapped the first 2 episodes together and discussed the character played by Melanie Lewinsky on that show. She was the titular mother that we discussed. And it was a lot of fun. So yeah, it was called Are You My Mother on the Glitterjaw Network. And they're based out of Richmond, Virginia. So heck yeah, I'm at home with those guys.
The Glitterjaw Network, huh?
Yeah. I'm meeting more and more people every day, more networks. But yeah, these were our movies of 2023. Please check them out. I might make a succinct list. I might not. You might just have to listen to check it out. Thank you for joining us again. And thank you, Lindsey, for coming on and talking to movies with me. And until next episode, I hope you, Lindsey, always find water and shade and shoes. Bye.
Bye.